Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Ask the Theologian on this Thursday. I think it's the 8th of June, if I'm not mistaken, and very glad that you are here, wherever it is that you're from, like, I don't know, Mississippi or California, Illinois, Canada, Belgium, Buffalo River, wherever it might be. Glad you're here today. And we have today the Arabian Nights tie. What do you think? Arabian Nights. There we go. Nice little royal purple with a, I don't know if you call that a black or a charcoal gray or whatever, but you know, your dad would like it for Father's Day or something like that, you know, $7.99 right there. And, you know, it will make you, it's an excellent choice to make you look and feel confident and stylish. Available at dispensationalpublishing.com. Just go to shop and hit the ties button. Ed in Illinois, glad to see you. Myra in beautiful Green Bay, glad to see you. Someday I'm going to go to Green Bay. I have not been there. I'm just taking your word on it that it's beautiful. I might get there and say that's one of the ugliest places I have ever been. But I kind of doubt it because I have been to some ugly places before. And I picture Green Bay as not one of those. Very glad you're here. If you are watching live with us on YouTube, if you'll put the word question first when you ask a question, that will pop it up, highlight it, send it over my way, and I'll be sure and get it. I try to watch the chats too, but I sometimes miss those if you're watching live on Worshify or randywhiteministries.org. If you ask a question, if you have a question mark or or the word question, it's going to say, hey, is this a question? And you will put that in and say, yeah, submit that as a question. It'll send it over to me. Or you can go to askthetheologian.com and submit your questions 24 hours a day, 6 days a week, and 7 days a week. We don't even rest on the Sabbath. We're not under the law. Glad you all are here. Liz, thanks for helping me out there. Illinois at the Wisconsin border. I remember that now. Maybe I'll continue to remember that. Let's start in Oslo, Minnesota. Our friend Eric up there has a follow-up question from a number of days ago. He asked about the miracle in the book Miracle in Stone, Joseph A. Seiss, which I think is a fantastic book. If you like anything about Egyptology, the pyramids, or even biblical interpretation, it's a great book to get. Also available at dispensationalpublishing.com for some ridiculously cheap price. Miracle in Stone by Joseph A. Seiss. And the question came up a few days ago about Seiss's argument that Melchizedek and Job were the same person. Now, I said I've got an argument that Christ and Melchizedek are the same person. These have to be mutually exclusive because Christ certainly was not Job. Job was not Christ. So if Melchizedek is the pre-incarnate Christ, then Job and Melchizedek aren't the same person. Now, these are actually very close answers, very close to the same, because you could say that Melchizedek was a type of Christ, in which case you could also say it's Job. And I think there is some, in fact, a pretty good reason to say that Job was a type of Christ. I've taken Job as a type of Israel, but remember that Israel is embodied in Christ as well, and so saying, is this Israel or is this Christ? You almost are looking at the same thing. So if you take Melchizedek as a type of Christ, then Job could be a type of Christ and could be Melchizedek. Now, all that was mine, and I haven't read what Eric has to say here on the follow-up. Miracle in Stone, page 109. Seiss doesn't try to equate Job with the pre-incarnate Christ. In fact, he doesn't even address the theophany idea. This makes me think that Melchizedek equals Christ is a relatively recent teaching. Melchizedek is only used 2 times in the King James. You can't get the theophany idea from either text. It seems to be eisegesis, not exegesis. I start to think that Melchizedek equals Christ is yet another one in which we were taught wrong. I'd love to hear your take on what Seiss presents about the identity of Melchizedek. Well, let's look. Again, obviously, Melchizedek as the pre-incarnate Christ, the theophany, actually, to be more persnickety, the word would be a Christophany, an appearance of Christ or of God. A theophany is appearance of God, a Christophany, appearance of Christ. That idea cannot be wrong because I have taught it in the past. Therefore, it is right. Moving to the next question. Well, let me show you where I and others who get the idea of Melchizedek as a Christophany come from. And it would be in the book of Hebrews. Is it chapter 7? You're right. Melchizedek is only taught twice. Once in Genesis, once in Hebrews chapter 7. And let's just go to the Hebrews passage. Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of the Most High God, met Abraham, and Abraham gave him a tenth of all, the first being by interpretation the king of righteousness, after that the king of Salem, which is the king of peace. Now, from that, you could say, okay, well, that fits Jesus, but you couldn't say that is the Christ right there. King of righteousness, king of Salem, king of peace. But this verse 3 right here is where you get the Christophany idea. Without father, without mother, without descent, having neither beginning of days nor end of life. I think even Eric would agree with me. It's hard to say that Job didn't have a father and didn't have a mother and didn't have a genealogy, a descent, and didn't have the beginning of days and didn't have the end of days. You would have to take Hebrews chapter 7, verse 3, allegorically, if you apply that to anything other than a Christophany. A Christophany is the only explanation that you can take Hebrews chapter 7, verse 3, literally, that Melchizedek does not have a father. He does not have a mother. He does not have a descent. He does not have a beginning of days. He does not have an end of life. It's got to be a theophany or a Christophany. Again, if you take that literally. Now, I suspect you could take it in a more allegorical sense. You could probably translate that out a little bit if you wanted. Let's check some translation comparisons. Hebrews 7:3. And see what we get. Left side of the screen over here. ESV, he is without mother, without father, without mother, without genealogy. NIV, without father or mother, without genealogy, without beginning of days, end of life, resembling the Son of God, he remains a priest forever. Even NIV doesn't change it to something like, we don't know who his mother is, we don't know who his father is, we don't know anything about his pedigree, we don't know his birth date or his death date, but he was a fine fella just like me and you. He puts his pants on the same way I do, one leg at a time. So even NIV doesn't soften the words. That tells me there's no need to look into the Greek. What it means is without father, without mother, without descent, having neither beginning of days nor end of life. But made like unto. That's kind of an interesting phrase that probably is where we would have to go next. But made like unto the Son of God, abideth as a priest continually. What does it mean that Melchizedek was made like unto the Son of God? Could those words be used of a Christophany? We would want to look at the various parts of the argument on there. But that, I think Hebrews 7:3 is the heart of the Christophany idea. And I think it's a pretty good argument. Now, that said, would you have to take that as a Christophany? Maybe not. I think you just have to have an excellent argument. And I don't know what the argument would be on that to put that way. And Eric mentions those three men in Genesis. That's in the account, the three men that came, visited Abraham. I think that, trying to remember back to my Abraham series here recently on that, but I think there you've got a Christophany as well with two angels, that is hard to interpret that as three fellows that come up. In fact, I think by the time you work through that passage, you end up with one of those guys is called the Lord. So again, whether you want to call that a theophany or a Christophany, I'd probably go with Christophany myself, but you would have the same kind of thing there. Two angels and the Son of God given through that. Excellent. Now, I'm going to ask Trent here to run in and get me Miracle in Stone. And we're going to take a look at page 109 here in just a little bit. And I should have gathered that on my... Since you have a page number, I'm going to go ahead and bring that out. Miracle in Stone, page 109. While we're getting that book, which will take just a second, this is Thursday. You know what we do on Thursday, right? On Thursday, we have the book of Romans rightly divided and verse by verse, and that takes place at 7 p.m. Mountain Time. We are in the 9th chapter of the book of Romans, and I look forward to that, starting in verse 17, 16 or 17, I don't remember. I think it's verse 17. It's the verse that says, God hardened Pharaoh's heart, and we'll look at that. We'll see how the Calvinists abuse that passage, I think. We'll see what it means or how it's coming about in the various progress that has been made, and what is coming there. Thank you. After I sent him that book, it dawned on me that I've happened to have it online, on my computer, because we happen to be the publisher of that particular book. So let's just do it that way. How's that sound? It is... It's coming up. Here we go. Now let me get to page 109. Okay. So here we have page 109. Who was Melchizedek? An illustrious personage. This is Joseph Seiss that says, an illustrious personage thus breaks upon our notice with the sudden grandeur of the Great Pyramid itself. Who was... the Great Pyramid itself, who he was, notice he capitalizes that, who he was has been something of a question for thousands of years, a question which perhaps can be positively answered. This guy, in his chronological Sakara, that's probably a pretty good book, as cited by that guy, identifies the personage with the patriarch Job. There's also more to sustain the view than any other ever presented. The time is the same. I would agree with that. On general internal evidences, Dr. Owen assigns the book of Job to the period immediately preceding Abraham. The length of Job's life places him in the pre-Abrahamic reign. I would agree of those guys. He evidently lived before the Exodus, before the destruction of Sodom. So, yeah, okay, all of that is good. And Job speaks of the rocks yielding him a spring of mineral oil. Such oil springs there evidently was in the region of Sodom. Okay, so he goes through some getting him in the right place there. The country of the country of the one is also that of the other. Abraham met Melchizedek in Palestine. Let me stop and mention that right there, because sometimes a modern reader would say, oh, Palestine. That's not the name of it. It's named Israel. But remember that when Joseph A. Seiss wrote in, I don't know what it was, Civil War era days. When Joseph A. Seiss wrote, it was called Palestine. So he was calling it what it had been called at that point for 1,700 years. So they met in Palestine, but no one claims that he was born or reared there. Okay, I agree with all that. Moving on. In general character and position, Job and Melchizedek appear to be one and the same. Paul calls on his Jewish readers to consider this great man Melchizedek, and of Job, the sacred record is this man was the greatest of all men of the East. Okay, that good point. Melchizedek was a priest under the Most High God. That fits altogether. Salem all agree in assigning the princely rank to Job. It remains a question till now whether he was the real king, many maintaining that he was. He was certainly at least a great emir. Melchizedek was a worshiper. Okay, goes that. The genealogical tables also supply the name, which would seem to indicate the existence of an Arabian Job who appears at the right time in the right connection. So he sets down the name Job-Ab, which is quite capable of being the father of Job. Now here's where, I'm wondering, does he bring up 7:3? 70 translators of the Coptic, so he goes into some evidence of Job's genealogy. But looks to me like, obviously we're skipping some there in the footnotes and whatnot, which could have some good information. Looks to me like Seiss fails to mention Hebrews 7:3, which maybe throws his argument to smithereens. All that to say. It's a good book, by the way. All that to say, you can have an argument that is filled with logic, and everything in his argument I think I agree with. I mean, obviously I went through it very quickly there. But I'd say, yeah, you saw me doing that. I agree. Yeah. But we don't know, Hebrews 7:3. Why did Seiss leave that out? I don't know. Maybe, and I'm assuming he left it out because obviously we went through quickly there. It is possible, even we preachers, sometimes don't bring up the thing that's going to spoil our parade. Sometimes we just don't know. It's hard for me to imagine that Seiss didn't know. Seiss, however, typically is not one to keep secrets. He's one to thoroughly go through. So I don't know why he didn't address Hebrews 7:3 in there. That here's all the evidence of Job's genealogy, and he fits the right time, he fits the right place, he fits the right personage, he fits the right description of who he is. Yeah. And so you come up and say, yeah, they're the same. But that one piece of information changes everything. And in a court of law, it's illegal to hide evidence. Even if the prosecutor's got evidence that would have acquitted him, and the prosecutor doesn't bring that forth, the prosecutor theoretically loses He could go to jail for it, honestly. By the way, that's what happened to Richard Nixon. Just a side note there. It is proven today that the prosecutor had the information that would have acquitted Richard Nixon completely, but the prosecutor, who happened to be of another party than Nixon, kept it secret. Now you know the rest of the story. Okay, that was fun. I think, and I agree, Eric, who now agrees with me. Hard to get around that Hebrews 7:3. It is hard to get around that Hebrews 7:3. Let's go to my friend Alex in London, who says, what answer can you give for atheism? One of my atheist friends, Alex says, when we were born, we were all atheists. Let's start with that argument. When we were born, we were all atheists. I'll answer that direct. So, atheist friend says, Randy, when we were born, we were all atheists. And I say, exactly. When we were born, we were all stupid. But once we got a brain and began to learn to use our brain, we began to look and we began to say, whoa, I don't want to sit here in infantile ignorance. I want to continue to learn. So when we were born, we didn't know 2 plus 2. But that didn't mean 2 plus 2 was not accurate. 2 plus 2 is 4, even when we're born. I've got a wonderful little grandson at home. Not really my home, at his home. And you know, he's 3 months old, and he's not yet talked to us about God. He must not believe in God. Yeah, when we were born, we didn't know anything. So I think that's kind of it's a very weak argument. Because there's a lot of things, certainly your atheist friend holds now that he did not hold when he was born. Furthermore, I would even say your atheist friend, let's call your atheist friend 40 years old. If your atheist friend is 40 years old, there are even things he holds now at 40 that he didn't hold when he was 30. But does that mean it's false because he didn't hold it when he was 30? So that basically, I think, is just poor logic on his part. So for the atheist, I think if I were doing this, now if I had an atheist friend, and I should have an atheist friend, I've got atheist acquaintances, but if I should have, everyone I suppose ought to have an atheist friend, just for the fun of it. And I think that I would want to start with this idea, knowing that this is probably going to take a long time. I suspect to win an atheist to my intellectual argument for the existence of God, most of the time is going to take a long, long time. So I would not expect to be able to bring out the magic bullet. You know, here's the silver bullet, and I'm going to fire this one, and it is going to kill that atheism immediately, and my friend is going to see the light. That might happen every now and then, but I'd be very surprised if it happened very often. So I would look at it and say, okay, this is a really long thing. I think I would start, the foundational building block to the argument I would start is, isn't your atheism a faith? Isn't that a spiritual, a spiritual conviction that you have? Wouldn't you agree atheist friend? Madeline? Oh, if it's a girl, I just think of Madeline Murray O'Hare. Wouldn't you agree, atheist friend, that scientifically, in the world of physics, that's the physical world, you cannot prove God? Would you agree with that? Probably the atheist friend is going to say, yeah, absolutely, you cannot prove God. And I agree with that. I don't think you can prove God using the scientific method. But just the same, could I then get my atheist friend to agree that using the scientific method or using physical sciences, physics, you cannot disprove God? I would hope that, given time, and that may be a hard one for him to swallow because he's not ready, he wants to hold on to his atheism, his religion of atheism. I want him to see that his atheism is a faith. His God is the God called no God. So, could I get him to see over time that there is no way that he can prove the non-existence of God? Now, if I can get him to that point, okay, I cannot prove the non-existence of God. For most of us, that would seem kind of a easy one, but atheism is a religion, and they're not ready to give up their dogma very quick, so they're probably going to push against that. So it might take months of subtle little comments and sometimes direct little comments and maybe arm wrestling to convince them that I, as an atheist, cannot disprove the existence of God. Now, if I can get him to that point, then I can say, okay, Madeline, you have your faith, I have my faith, right? He or she would have to eventually come forth and say, yeah, okay, it is, I do have a faith in the non-existence of God because I can't actually prove the non-existence of God. And the believer has a faith in the existence of God, even though they cannot scientifically prove the existence of God. So what I want to get to is both the atheist and the theist, or maybe a deist. They both operate on faith. So you could call it a religion. There's the atheist religion, and there's the theist religion. So that goes a long ways, because at least we're on the same level of saying, you have reasons for your faith, I have reasons for my faith. Now let's begin to examine your reasons for the faith of the non-existence of God and my reasons for the faith of the existence of God. And that's where you'd come into 101 different things that you could argue and have fun with and take through. But I think the biggest challenge is to convince the atheist that they are a person of faith, because they absolutely are. So if you could work, whether it takes a day, a week, a month, a year, a decade, whatever, to get them to the point of, yes, I am a person of faith. Could they go to Atheists Anonymous and introduce themselves, hi, my name is Madeline and I'm a person of faith. My faith is in the non-existence of God. That's a huge step. Now, in one sense, all you have done is gotten them from, is that good English? Gotten them? I don't know. That's the way we say it here in the United States. I don't know how in the motherland they would speak that proper. but you have helped them to progress with an idea. Did you like that, Alex? How I put that London, put the R on the end of their idea. That atheism is a faith. And so what you have really done is move them from an atheist to an agnostic. An agnostic says, I can't prove it. I don't really know if there is a God or isn't a God, but I don't feel like there's a God, or I don't want to investigate it right now, or whatever. But I think that's progress to move them to that point. What would I do from there? Now that I get them to see that it's a matter of faith, I would, this would depend on personality, on a person's knowledge in various topics, because you might be better equipped to argue in one area than another area. I probably would want to go with the study of probability. And in the study of probability, I probably, in the study of probability, would want to try to convince them that these kind of probabilities make the non-existence of God more of a leap of faith, a leap of lack of knowledge, than to take the probability. But you've got, like, Shirley mentions evil in the world. And that's a hang-up for a lot of both atheists or agnostics, the presence of evil. You might even be able to argue, I don't know the best argumentation here, we would have to work on it, but you might even be able to argue, well, is there such a thing as evil if there's not such a thing as good? And if there is such a thing as evil, then there must be such a thing as good, and so therefore, can that lead to, eventually down the path, lead to, okay, I guess there is a God? Or even dealing with the more, I'll call it mundane issue. It's not mundane at all, but I mean, it's easy to confront right on the surface. The issue of, could a good God allow evil in the world? I think absolutely. So, yeah, I think I would work from those perspectives, and of course it would depend on what really bothered my atheist friend, who now believes that he is in the religion of atheism, and work on that. But I wouldn't go from the argument of we were all born atheists, because we were all born crying. Barbara, good to see you today. Enjoyed answering your question yesterday. Thank you. Let's see, here's an anonymous question. Love anonymous questions. Let's take it in. Is there a gap in Genesis to allow for this to fit in the Bible? Look, I got to add a piece of punctuation there. Is there a gap in Genesis to allow for this to fit in the Bible? Okay. What is this? He's given me a link. Let's see if we can. I say he. This very well could be she. My apologies. Ancient discovery in Greece may completely rewrite the human story. I saw this. I saw a link. I actually didn't read it. Let's see. I'm going to put in, I'm not sure. I got all that link. I'm gonna try looking by the title here. Ancient discovery in Greece may completely rewrite The human story. I don't know if I spelled all that right. We're going to see if we can narrow that down from the Daily Caller, and this is I got the same. Okay, so let's check this out. I saw the headline the other day, and I was a little bit on the run. I meant to read it, but I didn't. So here is the article on the Daily Caller. And ancient discovery in Greece may rewrite the human story. Let's see, is that the Acropolis there, if I'm not mistaken? This is from K. Smith, or Smithy, on June the 7th. So that was what, yesterday? Researchers announced Thursday that the timeline of Greece's history needs to be pushed back by at least 250,000 years after a shocking discovery deep inside an open coal mine. Archaeologists uncovered the nation's oldest archaeological site, which dates back at least 700,000 years. It is thought to be associated with some of our earliest hominy. We'll go with hominy ancestors, according to the Associated Press. Although older archaeological sites have been uncovered in other parts of Europe, Asia, and Africa, this is the first major discovery this age of Greece, and may completely rewrite aspects of the nation's human history. The site contained rough stone tools from the lower Paleolithic period, roughly 3.3 million to 300,000 years ago. The AP noted. The remains of extinct creatures such as giant deer, elephants, hippopotamus, rhinoceros, Mackay monkeys were also found at the site. More work is needed to determine the exact date. However, archaeologists will not be able to be sure until hominin fossil remains are recovered. The site is the oldest currently known hominin presence in Greece, pushes back the known archaeological record in the country by up to 250,000 years. I'm wondering, kind of, as I read that, I'm wondering why, let's see, why that may completely rewrite the human story. It looks to me, first of all, like the headline is a bit exaggerated. Maybe wrong on that. It also, here's my challenge with the argument, before we even get into could this fit back in some sort of gap. That article is filled with a whole lot of assumption. Let's get back here. The nation's oldest archaeological site, which dates back at least 700,000 years. I would like to know how they know that. What science are they using? What methods, what assumptions in the science are they using to determine this is 700,000, at least 700,000 years old? Could the science possibly be wrong on it? Could their assumptions be wrong on it? Could it only be 400,000 years old and not 700,000? Could it be 1,000,000 years old and not 700,000? What's the degree of variance in the accuracy? Even, a poll has a, what do you call that? Plus or minus 3%, whatever the name for that is. So what's the deviation within that 700,000 years according to the science with the assumptions that they are taking? And then, are those assumptions in that science any good? And that wouldn't be hard to figure out, because we could go to the, 40 or 50-year-old, I guess 40 some odd year old, maybe it's 50, Mount St. Helens, and get some dust from there or whatever, put it through the same test. Let's do some things that there is a known factor, and let's put that through there. Let's see what we get. I'd want to know that. It is thought to be associated with some of our earliest hominin, that's hard to say, hominin ancestors, according to the Associated Press. Okay, it's really not according to the Associated Press. I don't think the Associated Press is the authority on hominin, maybe it's hominin ancestors. So all the Associated Press did was report it. So first of all, I would say, who's her name? Kay. Kay, why are you telling me the Associated Press says this is the earliest hominin ancestry? Don't you know what the Associated Press is? They just report stuff. So who said it, actually? Surely you could call up your friends at AP. Bring, bring. Helen, are you there? Can you tell me, Helen? Who said that? So come on, Kay. Use your Rolodex. Get the snarky bell. Basically, I'm saying I would read this with a lot of skepticism. The site contained rough stone tools from the lower Paleolithic period, roughly, look at this, this lower Paleolithic period, roughly 3.3 million to 300,000 years ago. You telling me there is a 3 million year variance? I'm okay if you say 50 years. Somewhere between 300,000 and 3.3 million. Something says, I think you're making stuff up. The AP noted. Well, what's the AP know about this? Again, the AP is nothing but a newspaper. The AP reports on what somebody else says. So who actually noted it? That's what I want to know. I'm not, you know, I've heard of the Daily Caller, but I'm not familiar with it. I don't know. Somebody inform me. Is the Daily Caller, is that liberal, or is it conservative? Is it middle of the road? Is it what is it? Let's continue. The remains of extinct creatures, such as giant deer, elephants, hippopotamuses, rhinoceros, and Mackay monkeys, were also found at the site. Now, I'm kind of interested in that because, first of all, deer, elephants, hippopotamus, rhinoceros, and Mackay monkeys are not extinct. So maybe there's some dead ones there. But if it's an elephant, it's an elephant. It's a dead elephant, not an extinct elephant. The remains of extinct creatures. Okay, such as giant deer. So maybe they're trying to say this is not the deer. I had a little deer in my window looking in this morning saying, hello, hello. Is she up yet? They know I don't bring them the corn, but she does. Is she up? Where is she? But it was a small deer. It was not a giant deer. So maybe they're saying it's some different kind of a deer, elephant, hippopotamus, rhinoceros, and Mackay monkey. That one's kind of specific. This is an extinct Mackay monkey. I'm probably not pronouncing that right. But I'm just going to go here and say, are those kind of monkeys extinct? Because I don't know my monkeys very well. Rhesus, that I'm going to go with Mackay, are Asian Old World monkeys. Natural range includes Afghanistan. A few troops have and now live in Florida. Okay. Intelligent animals. Well, anyway, Mackay, let's go with Mackay. Maybe I'm wrong on it. Mackay monkeys are not extinct. And why Mackay? These extinct monkeys are extinct Mackay monkeys. I had an investigator friend. He worked for not the FBI, but the state of Texas version of the FBI. Can't remember what they're called now, but he worked for the state of Texas in their investigation division. And he told me once something that I kind of always, I don't know, it just resonated when he said it, and I remember, you know how those things go. And he said, we when we're investigating someone, he says, we'll talk, you know, about a lot of different unrelated things. And we try to find where they get into a lot of specific kind of unrelated detail. And we hone in there. Because he says there's something about the human psyche that when it wants to cover something up, it puts a lot of detail in there. So, you know, Monday was a great day. Tuesday was a fantastic day as well. Wednesday, another great day on Wednesday. I had eggs for breakfast, and I had a bit of sausage. I had 3 strips of bacon. I had, orange juice. I actually had 2 glasses of orange juice. And the investigator immediately says, Wednesday, we got to hone in on Wednesday. I don't care about Monday or Tuesday. So what that tells me here is this great degree of precision about these are giant deer and elephant and hippopotamus and rhinoceros and macaque monkeys that were found at the site. I'd want to say, show me the evidence. I wonder if they found a tooth. Remember was it Lucy? Lucy, the hominid monkey thing that they found? If maybe it's not Lucy, but it's one of those. And then later it's like, oh, yeah, it was actually a pig tooth. Oops. So I want to know what the evidence there is. More work is needed to determine the exact date. Well, I would agree there if you got a 3 million year variance. So they haven't found any hominin fossils. And yet this could change the human story. Well, there we have a third time. According to the AP, the site is the oldest currently known hominin presence in Greek. Pushes back the known archaeological record in the country by up to 250,000 years. Again, I would say the AP is not an expert on these things. The AP does nothing but repeat what everybody else says. So who's behind the AP reporting? And why wouldn't you put that up? That means K's either lazy or K knows that there's nobody really reporting this. But we need a click. We need a click here. So, I don't know, goes on, the area where the tools discovered has been linked to ancient Greek legends, such as that of an ancient race of giants who fought the gods Olympus. The AP noted. Ancient writers even described the area of the site as a supernatural war. You know what I would do if I was a reader of the Daily Caller and there was more than 1 or 2 articles like this, I would say, why am I reading the Daily Caller when I can read the AP? If they're just going to report what the AP says, I don't need the middleman. Now, so basically, back to the question. Ancient discovery in Greece may completely rewrite the human story. I haven't seen anything there that even close to gets me to say, oh, we got to rewrite the human story. So then I don't know where I would fit it in some gap in Genesis. It seems, it almost seems like saying, if we've got fairy dust, where would we use it? Well, so far I don't have any fairy dust. So it's just kind of speculation on, where it all fits there. Thanks, Anonymous. I appreciate it. That was fun. Look at that. But hey, the Daily Caller, real news starts here. Oh, I'm sure it does. It looks to me like it started at the AP, but but nonetheless, there we go. Maybe the Daily Caller wants to hire me as a news analyst, or just someone to, like an editor, to look over this and ask questions and say, "Okay, why don't you go do a little more work on that one?" Okay, I get the snarky bell. I get it. I understand. So Randy says the Texas Rangers. I think there's actually a branch of the Texas Rangers that is the investigative branch, but I could be wrong on that as well. But maybe it is just the Rangers themselves, and as he well points out, not the baseball team, but the real Texas Rangers. Thank you. Jerry in Georgia. I would question the assumption that we are. I did that one already. Never mind. Thanks, Jerry. Edith in Missouri. If 2 Corinthians 5:17 is applicable to us, how is the phrase "all things are become new" translated if it doesn't refer to the flesh, as verse 16 seems to indicate? Looks like somebody's been actually reading their Bible and doing a good job at it. 2 Corinthians 5:17, therefore if any man be in Christ, he is a new creature. Old things are passed away. Behold, all things become new. Now, if this is applicable to us, how do we understand this? All things are become new. Especially in the light of verse 16, henceforth know we no man after the flesh, yea, though we know Christ after the flesh, yet now henceforth we know him no more. Gives the idea, the understanding that the all things are become new does not refer to the flesh, because the flesh has not become new. Let's check a Greek tense there. 2 Corinthians 5:17. Let me get here where I can take a look at that. Have become, verb, perfect, active, indicative. Have become. The perfect tense means it happened in the past and the effect of that continues to this day. Makes sense? So here, all things are become new. I think I read that as have. Should be are. All things are become new. Use the present because all things are new. Our things became new. All things became new. All things are new still. It's that perfect tense. We don't have so much of it in English. We don't have tenses in our verbs for the most part in English. So back then, all things become new. They work forward and still are new. And yet, he's in the context of talking about we've got this old flesh that we want to get rid of, that we want to remove. We want it to be new. It's not new. This may be the case. It may be a case of speaking. There's a new spiritual day, because you and I continue to get older, right? So there's a new spiritual day which will come about, and that day comes. You know, I find 2 Corinthians chapter 5 to be one of the most fascinating chapters in all the Bible, and yet also one of the more difficult chapters in all the Bible. Someday we should do a study just on 2 Corinthians 5. So how's that for not fully answering your question there, Edith? But I am appreciative of the question. I do think, again, you've got to somewhat take that in a spiritual manner to put that in. Let me stop there. Okay. I think I finished today's questions. How's that? I still have 3 minutes left. So I should tell you, I don't know that I have time to go back to another old one. I should tell you that at dispensationalpublishing.com, go to the blog. I happen to be there. I put a new article up just this morning. It is called Crafting Robust Biblical Arguments. A case study from Mark 1:10. Last night we were studying Mark, and we studied Mark 1:10. And I talked about, and that's basically what I've built this article about, I've talked about the fact that sometimes we have bad argumentation for a good argument. And the bad argumentation causes our argument not to look so good. And so we want to craft robust biblical arguments. And in the particular article, I'll just read the conclusion for you right here. When formulating biblical arguments, consider the passage's historical, cultural, linguistic context. This practice will ensure a robust and accurate interpretation and argument. Those of us who are dispensationalists have an uphill climb in today's theological argument, but even today, there are millions of Christians who will listen to a logic-based, solid theological argument. Let's make sure we give them one. And perhaps the place to begin is by asking ourselves a question. Does the text actually say what I say it says? If not, strengthen the argument before starting the argument. You can check that out. Again, at dispensationalpublishing.com, click the blog button. Hey, while you're there, you could go to the shop button. You could at the shop button, you could come over here and buy some books, or you could come over here and buy some ties. Like, look at all those nice ties there. There's one, Arabian Nights, for $7.99. You'll look stylish and sophisticated if you were to get that. Thanks for joining us. I look forward to tonight, 7 p.m. Mountain Time. We'll have a great time together looking at the book of Romans. RandyWhiteMinistries.org is our website, and it'll be a blessing to have you there. I'll be back tomorrow morning also on Ask the Theologian, 10 a.m. Mountain Time. Until then, keep rightly dividing the word